Hi, Roman. I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Real pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Thanks a lot for taking the time.
Hi there.
Maybe we could begin with a brief introduction to the King of Kings. For people who don't know anything about the film, what can they expect going in?
Well, it's the story of Jesus Christ told through the eyes of Charles Dickens, um, and I voice his son, who he's telling the story to. Yeah, it's really visually stunning and obviously heartwarming, and it's the Bible, so it's got some brilliant stories and some brilliant lessons.
And it's such an imaginative way into telling the story of Jesus by
That's
having it be, Charles Dickens, who everybody knows as, one of our best ever storytellers,
Mm.
engaging his son in this tale. When they first sort of approached you about the concept, about the role, what was your first thought?
I thought it was when I read it. I thought it was a really elegant. It's written for a younger audience. I thought it was really elegantly put together. And when I saw the animation, I thought it looked so visually stunning. The first thing I saw was Jesus, a bit of Jesus walking on water, and it looked great. And it has such a nice feel to it. And I felt very, very proud, quite happy to be a part of it. There's a real confidence boost getting off of it.
And of course, you've done plenty of live action work before, but I believe it's your first time doing, voiceover for animation. Did that completely change how you might approach a character? I guess, first and foremost, not having as
Yeah.
much work with it other than your voice. How did you even begin the task?
Well, it taught me a lot about the importance of vocals in acting in general, which I'd always overlooked when, doing live action. I think it is quite easy to overlook, but it taught me a lot about when to be when to be loud, when to be small, and it taught me a lot that you kind of have to build it up in animation because if you're just doing this, the same tone the whole way through, it just gets repetitive. So yeah, it really did kind of not only test me on my vocals, it gave me a lesson on how to use them effectively.
And you were saying that you had seen some of the animation when you started. So, I mean,
Yeah.
was it kind of one of these things that was happening in tandem, or did you have had the animation almost been finished while you were doing the voiceover? What kind of goes first?
I came on quite early. I was maybe 12, 15, 13, like 5 years ago. I was playing someone 5 years younger. And I think they had watched interviews of me, maybe Jojo Rabbit, and they had assumed I was still quite young and a bit squeaky. But my voice had just broken. And I went to meet them all and the whole team, and they kind of all turned a little pale. And he showed me the animation, and they showed me my character, and he's this little, cute ginger kid, he's about 5 years old. And I thought, oh no, that's the wrong kid, man. And anyway, I tried to speak as high pitched as I could. I had lemon honey and ginger drinks, which I was downing, and we cranked up the auto tune like it was like on a plane, when they crank up the whatever. And yeah, I saw the animations, and it was just so visually stunning and gorgeous that I thought, okay, I'm going to just try my best because this is going to be brilliant. And I'll regret it if I'm not as brilliant as everything else in it.
And I guess also because the audience really are experiencing the story through Walter's eyes. So, did you also need to kind of inject your voice with a lot of this sort of childlike wonder and curiosity because you're kind of the vehicle through which we're then going to experience the story ourselves?
Exactly. I mean, a lot of the time I'm talking about slaying dragons, like I had to kind of remember what it was like to want to slay dragons. But yeah, a lot of projection, a lot of excitement, which is actually quite nice to go back to, even if I was just playing a character, feeling or trying to pretend to be all very young and happy and seeing things for the first time and hearing things for the first time, like hearing about Jesus for the first time, which was actually really quite challenging, but quite rewarding. It was a nice thing to put a nice headspace to go into.
And of course, also the sort of father-son dynamic between Charles and Walter is kind of another layer to the story. I mean,
Yeah,
often with voiceover work, you're not necessarily in the same room, but knowing that Kenneth Branagh was
yeah,
your father, I mean, that must have just
I
been
felt cool.
immense. And
Yeah.
maybe when you heard it back, you could see that really chimed with one another.
I mean, when I first got the job, I thought, what would we do? What would I do if Kenneth Branagh was actually my father? I thought, God, it'd be pretty awesome, right? But yeah. Well, I hadn't seen who, which actor was playing which character, so I was trying to guess it with my ears, and I instantly knew it was Kenneth Branagh. And yeah, it was quite. It was yeah, it was a real opportunity. I love Kenneth Branagh, even though I wasn't able to be in the same room and act with him. It was nice to be a part of the scene.
Well, and even the rest of the lineup, right? With Oscar
Yeah,
Isaac and
yeah,
Herman, it's
I
like
know.
a bit of a who's who kind of in the,
Exactly.
the acting
Exactly. I
line.
knew it was Mark Hamill the instant I heard him. It was kind of like a paternal thing. Like I've watched Star Wars my whole life, and I heard his voice, and I thought, yeah, not fooling me, mate. Not fooling me. I know exactly who you are.
And then when you finally did, I guess, see the finished product, I mean, it's such a, you realize the power, I guess, of animation because, you're able to do things in an imaginative way. Obviously, you'd never be able to do really with live action. In fact, that, Walter is there, drawn into the story and, the two worlds are kind of overlapping. So were you even astounded to see the finished product?
I was. I couldn't recognize myself. I was trying to hear it, and I couldn't, without bragging or anything. I just couldn't hear it. It was quite weird to watch something, knowing it's yourself, but not being able to hear it. Yeah, it was. It was a real. I haven't finished the film. I'm only 2/3 in, but it's great to have seen all the casts and to hear all the voices, and to know who's who, and they all do such a brilliant job. And the animation really adds to it. It kind of all comes together, and it's just brilliant. It's really brilliant.
In terms of the takeaways from the film, I mean, obviously coming up to Easter, perfect time to kind of revisit the story of Jesus and the Bible. But, it's also that act of telling stories, particularly parents to their children is such a wonderful tradition. And I wonder if, like definitely younger audiences, but even parents watching it can kind of take that up too.
Yeah, I think so. I think you can interpret the Bible so many different ways, and I think each time you hear the story of Jesus, you're going to come away with a different thought. You might focus on a different element of it, and it goes through the whole span of his life. So there's just so much to take in. The animation does go into detail quite a bit on certain moments. Obviously, there's such a big period of text and time that it's hard to cover it all in loads of depth, but each message is there, and each kind of nuance to each story and each miracle is presented, and I really enjoyed that. And I've watched certain scenes like twice or three times on different occasions, and I find it really quite. I think it's brilliant that you can take different things from it each time and learn different things each time you watch it.
And looking back on your career, which obviously you're still only at the beginnings, but you've already done so many incredible things. I mean, Jojo Rabbit in particular, working with so many sort of A-listers, when you're only 11, and sort of the response to that, the critical reception to that film as well, been absolutely phenomenal. What are your memories of working on that movie?
I got a lot. My costume was so hot. I don't think I can even tell you how hot it was. It's in this big woolen, itchy Nazi outfit. And that was the first thing that always comes to my mind. A lot of just ham and cheese toasties. A lot of being, because I was the lead, and I was in it throughout. So, and we were in Prague, so I was doing 12-hour days a lot of the time, and it was my first film. So it was quite full on, but I enjoyed every moment of it. I found it so rewarding because I just knew that it was brilliant. I had such an opportunity to do something brilliant, do something that I won't ever be able to maybe get to do again. But yeah, it was tough work, a lot of screaming, which I was good with, and by the end of it, it just didn't faze me. Tyker would constantly, he'd go, "Oh, Roman, get over here!" And by the end of it, it was just, didn't faze me. He had to try different methods to get my attention. I mean, having met all those actors and have been able to spend time with them all, and to be able to have asked them all these questions and to have learnt so much from them, a lot on improvising actually, and how difficult it is, and how difficult comedy is, and trying to get it right. I learned that it's much easier to make something sad or dramatic than it is to make something really quite funny. Yeah, there's a lot of that shoot was about trying to get the tones right. I learned a lot about different ways in which one can kind of balance that in each scene, and when not to go too deep on the humor and when not to be too sad, or when to be humorous, and when when you should be really quite sad. And that was really quite a lesson, especially for my first lesson in the film industry. I'm very, very honored.
And obviously, as you said, when you start on such a high, it's maybe kind of like afterwards, I mean, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
But you must have been inundated with options and roles. How do you go about picking things? I know you did Silent Night, for example.
I don't get to
Not too
pick
bad
much.
either.
No, I don't get to pick much, sadly. After Jojo, I didn't get any work in for a good couple of years. And I mean, Silent Night was made by my mum. I mean, my mum had to cast me. It was. I was just going through, one of those ages where I wasn't 12, but I wasn't, 18, 17. So there was very little out there. I thought, oh my God, my career is over. But it's picked up recently. Yeah, I mean, there's not many roles out there for young adults like Jojo, and I'm starting to realize that more and more. But then again, there seems to be more opportunities now. I'm older than there was when I was 12. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to become an adult and being able to act adult roles. Hoping I start looking a little older soon. So so that I can start pursuing older characters.
And do you have anything in the pipeline already? Or if you were going to pick, I don't know, your sort of dream director to work with, or a genre you'd love to try? Is there anyone's footsteps you sort of see yourself following in?
I love playing an anti-hero or just playing a villain. I do love a villain. I seem to drift more to kind of material and auditions that are to do with villains. I'd love to. There's so many brilliant directors who are working right now, and I'd love to work with all of them. I'd love to work with some of the big names who were around before I was born. Only because I know that they're not going to be working for much longer. I'm more excited to work with certain actors than I am directors, to be honest. Only because each job I do, I take the chance to find out, to ask questions to the actors and to find out, how do I go about this? How did you get to the position you're in now? And they're always so generous about that information. So my goal is really to work with some great actors who I inspire to be and ask them questions, or then directors.
Any that you'd like to name drop? Who's on it?
Well, I recently did a film with Bill Nye, and I learned so much from him. First, I learned a lot. His main point was learning your lines, learning and drilling them in to a point where you don't have to think about them during the scene, and not to take drugs, which is, I think those are two great tips. He was great. He was and a lot of it was on choosing costume, how important the costume is. I'd just done a film where my costume was dreadful. When I do a costume fitting, I don't feel particularly. I just feel a bit shy about saying what I like and don't like. And I once witnessed him choosing what pajamas he wanted to wear in a scene, and he was firm on what he wanted and what he didn't want. And I thought, that is brilliant. I need to emulate that more, and to be certain on what is right and what isn't right, because it all kind of builds to the final portrayal of your character. I didn't realize how important the costume was, but I guess he taught me that, how important it is.
I was even thinking as well, I know he's American, but Leonardo DiCaprio did a lot of roles when he was young, and sort of managed to make that transition, didn't he? Each sort of to play different kind of set of characters.
Well, I watched an interview of him when he was younger the other day, and he said that he's gonna, when he was young, he said he wants to play as many young roles as he can while he's young, because he won't be able to again. And he said all those adult roles in the future, he said he'll do, but he wants to try and take advantage of his youth while he can. And I thought that was great. I feel very fortunate that I'm going to try and take the opportunity as well to play young roles while I can.
And if you're surrounded by filmmakers a lot, even your parents, maybe going in the director's chair, is that ever in your?
I think my mom would kill me. I think she would. I don't think I know enough yet. I'd love to. I love being bossy and having control, but I think it's something I just don't know enough about. Yeah, but I would love to. But she would kill me. Maybe once. Maybe once I'm a lot older, and maybe after. I'd love to start writing, even if it's not for film or anything. Just to write. I think it's quite. I always thought it'd be helpful because you kind of understand the purpose of each line. I mean, because my mum's a writer. When I do auditions with her, she understands why each line is written in the way it is, and I think that is such. That is such a talent, especially for acting, to know why it is that I'm saying this line, and therefore how to do it.
Amazing. Well, I think I've taken up all my time, but thank you so much for sharing all that with me.
Well, thank you.
Congrats on the movie,
Thank
and
you very
can't
much.
see what you do next.
Thank you for the lovely questions.
Thanks, Roman. See you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening. Bye.